Bueller?
Market two.
I just wanted to see if the necklace was going to make
No, it's true.
consideration.
That is.
Here in Plano.
Why bother?
Last year alone, our campus produced 820 tons of trash. That's over 259 pounds per person. By simply changing the way we throw away our trash, we can make an immediate difference locally and for the planet. For starters, composting
Can you turn the
is
volume
coming
up?
to Plano.
Sounds like a real pain.
Nope, it's easy. Simply reference the signs when pitching your trash.
How does composting even work?
All of our composting waste gets delivered to a partner facility. Over time, all that organic matter breaks down to become new. You can put more than just leftover food in the compost bins. We're switching all the to-go containers, cups, and utensils in our cafes and galleys to plant-based compostable materials.
What about stuff like this?
Even that. It's plastic made from corn.
Huh, well that's kind of cool.
Testing, testing, testing. Yeah, Bueller.
Bueller?
Market two.
I just wanted to see if the necklace was going to make
No, it's true.
consideration.
That is.
here in Plano.
Why bother?
Last year alone, our campus produced 820 tons of trash. That's over 259 pounds per person. By simply changing the way we throw away our trash, we can make an immediate difference locally and for the planet. For starters, composting
Can you turn the
is
volume
coming
up?
to Plano.
Sounds like a real pain.
Nope, it's easy. Simply reference the signs when pitching your trash.
How does composting even work?
All of our composting waste gets delivered to a partner facility. Over time, all that organic matter breaks down to become new. You can put more than just leftover food in the compost bins. We're switching all the to-go containers, cups, and utensils in our cafes and galleys to plant-based compostable materials.
What about stuff like this?
Even that. It's plastic made from corn.
Huh, well that's kind of cool.
Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed lunch. Everybody re-energized to go into the afternoon sessions? Good, good. Our fourth session today, I'm going to tell you a little bit of how this session came about. Over at Tysons Partnership, over the last 2 years or so, the Sustainability Council has been surveying regional businesses, large and small, about what they're doing in the realm of sustainability, what they'd like to be doing, and what they're struggling with. We've got a lot of good information out of that exercise, and one of the things that we found is there are 3 areas where businesses are really struggling to engage their employees and address sustainability. And those 3 areas are sustainable purchasing, green purchasing of their products and supplies, composting, and then developing outdoor areas and amenity spaces for their occupants. So with this session, we wanted to address those 3 things and have some experts come in and explain to you some of the strategies and methodology behind those different areas of sustainability. So today we have Danielle Nkojo from the DC Department of Energy and Environment. She's going to be talking about green purchasing. Andrew Green from Capital One, and big thank you to Capital One for hosting us here today. And Chris Garwood, registered architect with Davis Carter Scott, who will be speaking about green roofs and outdoor amenity spaces. So before Danielle comes up, I just want to say another thanks to our session sponsor for this session, who is Scott Long Construction, incredible contractor in this area and around the country. They focus in hospitals, senior care, and adaptive reuse. So thank you to Scott Long. You've been very helpful in making this session come to fruition. And with no further ado, Danielle, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start out by just saying thank you. This is a fantastic opportunity. I live not 10 minutes from here, right down Route 7, and so I've watched Tysons grow like wildflowers along the 495 corridor and along Route 7, and so it's exciting to know that my life's work focusing on sustainability is also the focus of the community that's developing here. And so I'm really looking forward to being part of the conversation around a sustainable Tysons. So as Kathy mentioned, my name's Danielle Nkojo, and I'm part of the sustainable team with the District's Department of Energy and Environment. The Urban Sustainability Administration focuses on green building, climate, waste and materials management, and then the general overall management of the sustainable DC sustainability plan. We are part of the government and we sit at the Department of Energy and Environment, but the plan and our overall goals were formed in a partnership with 27 other district agencies in DC, including most principally the Department of Planning, the Department of Contracting and Procurement, and the Department of Transportation. So all of those agencies came together and we set a goal, right? Into just one generation, 20 years, and this was set back in 2013, the District of Columbia will be the healthiest, greenest, and most livable city in the United States. And so what we needed to do was a plan around that. And through a series of public engagement meetings, we had about 1,000 people participate online by sending us comments and input. We had in-person meetings all over the city. We broke up into 11 different working groups. And then we had about 400 people follow us almost all the way through the process. The resulting plan has 143 actions to take us toward sustainability. And we've been doing pretty well, if I don't say so myself. We just released, well, not just released, but we recently released a 4-year progress report. Within that progress report, we've got about 75% of the goals that we set, of the actions that we set to undertake are underway, and about 25 of the actions have been completed. So this is a really exciting time for us. We're looking toward the future. In the last 18 months, we did several product stewardship programs. We created a product stewardship program for electronics called eCycle DC. Manufacturers of electronic goods that are sold in the district have to register with our department and any sales they have of covered electronic equipment, they're responsible for taking back a certain portion by weight of that electronic equipment. Most of that equipment really just covers computers and computer peripherals, as well as televisions and television peripherals. We're in the second registration year of that program. It's going well so far. We've gotten some feedback from the program, and we've partnered with other cities and states to see how these programs are going in other states. And if you follow this, you know some of them have modified their programs over time. And so in 2019, we'll be taking a looking at weights. One perfect example is as those TVs, as we call them, the baby got back TVs, as they come off the market. I know my old Sony weighed 270 pounds. And so when we're talking about responsibility by weight, using that as an initial benchmark was a good idea, but now we're seeing more and more flat screens come in, so we're going to have to adjust our expectations. One of the great things, though, is that we're putting educational information in all of our retailers. So if you're a retailer selling this covered electronic equipment in the district, you're going to have a sign as of January 1st at your point of sale that lets customers know there are opportunities to return these items in the district. You can bring them to our municipal transfer station on certain days of the week, but also there are a number of retailers that will take them back as well. Some retailers even have mail-in options. All of that information is going to be available to consumers in the district. The other product stewardship program that's been about almost a year old by now is our paint stewardship program. At every paint retailer, we let buyers know that they can return. There's about 8 stores in the city that are participating. They can return their unused paint to that retailer. It's not something they had to buy at that retailer. It could be those old rusty cans that are sitting in everybody's basement. I know even I had a couple. You can bring those in, and then we're doing large events. We're doing an event on November 18th at RFK Stadium where people can pull up and drop off the types of paint that we collect. We've done one up at Howard University's law school campus, and we'll do those probably about once a quarter. We're collecting a significant amount of paint. Part of the reason why we focus on this is this paint ends up in our water and sewer systems. It ends up dumped, and it can affect the environment in the district. So we want to divert this paint, encourage reuse. We don't yet partner with someone who reformulates the paint and puts it back out on the market, but that's something I'd really be excited to see happen. I know Portland has a Metro Paint, which is how they reuse their paint in that area. So these new product stewardship programs really built on recent history of waste diversion efforts that we've put forth in the district. We banned expanded polystyrene, or most commonly known as styrofoam, from what we call fast service restaurants or food service providers. We actually did that, I want to say, about 2 years ago. For the first year, we did a lot of outreach and consulting, what we call compliance assistance before we write you a ticket. And then the second year is when we actually started ticketing people that were still serving it. It's always exciting for us. Someone will come running down the hallway with styrofoam in their hand because one of the food trucks in DC served them in styrofoam. And they come running over to us to turn them in. I hate when they do it with my favorite truck, though. We've also had a bag fee instituted in the district. So there's a 5-cent fee on these plastic bags that you find typically find at the grocery store. That fee goes actually to fund, in partnership with the Anacostia Riverkeeper, they're actually free boat rides. So I've been on the boat ride about 2 or 3 times, but we take visitors to the district, we take students out on the Anacostia, and it's interesting because the Riverkeeper has reported to us, even just anecdotally, that he has actually seen less foam cups floating in the river, significantly less bags in the river. But it's a great way to connect the people to the impact, because that's one of the first places we'll see, particularly in a heavy rainfall event. We have a combined sewer overflow challenge in the district, which we are addressing, but very often we'll see a lot of floatables right after an event. And so The great thing about that bag fee is it actually supports our education initiatives in and around our Anacostia River. And our recent launch, just about a week and a half ago, we recently launched our Zero Waste DC website. It's zerowaste.dc.gov website, where we, instead of having our residents go to Department of Transportation to find out what they have, come over to Department of Energy and Environment to find out what we have, we actually put everything under one umbrella so that we speak with one voice to residents, workers, and visitors to the District of Columbia when it comes to zero waste. This website has resources for, I have old clothes, what do I do with them? There's a list of donation sites and consignment stores, and don't worry, I included Tysons. I drew about a 15-mile circle around the district, so I included Maryland and Northern Virginia as well in our list of resources there. It also provides information for people who are residents on what to put in their recycling bin and what to put in their trash bin. As of January 1st, there is a new set of recycling laws in the district. Everyone will be on one page, one standard for recycling in the District of Columbia. So if you're a business, if you're a restaurant, if you're a resident, we're all recycling the same thing. I mean, one of the things that was most stark to us, we'd have kids in school who were learning how to recycle, and they would go home to their apartment buildings that didn't recycle or didn't recycle the same thing. So we wanted to have a consistent message about what are recyclable materials in the District of Columbia. And so we encourage you to take a look at this website when you get a chance. It's a wealth of information, and we're continuing to build on it moving forward. So as we think about this, and we thought about zero waste and all the resources we were giving our residents and the visitors to our residents, the question then became, what are we as a government doing? When I find a plastic bottle in the compost bin, in our garbage cans, in our bathrooms at work, sometimes I'm shocked that this is the Department of Energy and Environment. So we really needed to start really looking inward as to our own practices. So we decided some time ago in 2009, the mayor signed an original order that was we were supposed to take a look and make the effort to buy what we call environmentally preferable products and services whenever possible. And so, that was good. That was a great first step. And then we proceeded to the Procurement Processes Reform Act, which again started to flesh out the language. What really happened to be able to support us moving forward was developing a program. So I would say as a parallel effort to the development of the Sustainable DC Plan, we started to build out our Sustainable Procurement Plan. There was a policy put in place in 2012, and there has since been an updated policy. But the most significant part of this, of course, is the development of what we call our specifications. We wanted to give our purchasers the tools to actually simply either cut and paste or just very easily put language into their procurement documents that steered us toward buying greener materials. And so we built two sides to this system: the detailed product specifications, which we had for 14 product categories, and then we had to take a critical look at our actual purchasing system, right? Because now we had language that described what it means to be an environmentally preferable product or service, and then we had a pass system that a pass or purchase system that worked completely outside of that. As we developed the products for our product categories, we wanted to be realistic, right? We had to look and say, and this is not a green pen that I'm holding out. No insult to anybody. I think this is mine. So we had to look at it and say, well, if I wanted somebody to buy a pen that is more sustainable or that is recyclable or is made of post-consumer content, it had to perform as other pens, right? Because the worst thing you want to hear is, I tried your green pen, it ran out of ink in 5 minutes, or it doesn't work. So we had to look at the performance of the categories. Then we also wanted to look at cost. In the District of Columbia, if you're buying a product that actually meets the standard of the environmentally preferable products and services, you have about a 12 to 15% leeway on the cost of that. That should be allowable. And then it's availability, right? We had to make sure that, even though, hey, someone's doing something really creative in Australia, well, is that product available here in the US? Is it something that we can get on a regular basis? So what we did was come up with 14 product categories. And so of these 14 product categories, we made sure there were at least 3 vendors that had items available that met those specifications of price, performance, and availability. Probably one of the most common ones, and the ones that I think are it's the easiest conversation to have with people, is about paper. Because I think people now are able to buy paper that is post-consumer content. It's not a second thought. It doesn't seem like it takes an extra effort. It's what's available usually when they're buying. If they actually navigate to their purchasing system, that paper is going to be available there. It's really for some of the other services that I think we have to end up having a larger conversation with some of our buyers about. So I apologize. I wanted to take you on a tour of our actual website, and so I'm not able to do that today. But what I wanted to share with you is that for each of the 14 items, particularly paper and cleaning supplies, we provide the buyers with specification guidance that talks about what does it mean for something to be an environmentally preferable product or service. We define that. We define the standards that we're complying with. For instance, there are people who buy paper every day who have no idea what the Forest Stewardship Council is or does. So there's actually an opportunity for them to educate themselves about the importance of those standards, how they're established, and how they're used around the country. There's also statement of work guidance and what we call our small purchase attachment. We wanted this to be simple as possible because this is truly behavior change, right? You've ordered the same pens from the same vendor since you started this job. Why would you do it differently? And now what we want to be able to do is have language for you to just be able to cut and paste into your procurement documents. And so we made those available on our website as well. We've also continued to have a reporting document that they can actually add the information that they purchased and a description of the item that they purchased. And then they can say why they purchased either a green item or they did not. That can be in their quarterly reporting, but they can also use our pass system as well. So one of the most I would say revolutionary, I don't know if that's the word, but it was revolutionary for us as a city, is that in our purchase system, which is it's an Ariba buyer system, we actually had to add a box, right? If we want someone to change behavior, we have to actually give them the tools to support that. So 2 places we add this. When people are actually planning their spend, they're looking forward, planning their acquisition spending for the next year, they can actually indicate whether or not their intent is to buy a green product. The great thing about this is that if they click no, our Office of Contracting and Procurement gets notified. So someone say, I don't know, they plan to buy 10 bicycles next year. And the question is this a green procurement? And it says no. It can prompt the staff in our Office of Contracting and Procurement to now take a look. Are there sustainable bicycles, right? I've never actively looked for one, right? I think bicycles help you be more sustainable. I don't know if the product itself is sustainable, but it gives us the opportunity, and those are our hints as to where we should do our research to make sure products are available in the future. And if we know of a product and we saw the no clicked here, we can reach out to that department and let them know about an available product that will meet their needs and meets those specifications of price, performance, and availability. The other thing that we did was in our actual purchasing system. So the first screen I showed you was the acquisition planning, right? I think I'm going to buy 10 bicycles in fiscal year 2019. This is when an actual purchase is happening. And so there's an opportunity here. So there is an opportunity here for the buyer to indicate whether or not this is an environmentally preferable product or service, and they click no. The great part about this is this box, right, where it says EPPS comments. Why? Why not? Tell us why not as an agency so we can start to address some of your challenges. This is a great example for staples, right? And I apologize if someone here is a staple manufacturer, but we haven't been able, the staples we've been using, those metal staples we've been using, they meet their performance standard, right? We haven't been able to find staples that are made from post-consumer recycled content. They're usually like some kind of a new plastic. They just don't perform as well, the ones that I've seen. And so if someone's buying staples, they put this indicator out. I also like that this is a real hint, toward people who are innovating, toward the startup culture, is that, hey, can you find an innovative staple? Can you find a staple made from post-consumer content? You might have a market here. This captures a lot of really important data for us. The other option is they can click yes, but it's not a current category. So it also tells us that we need to do some more research to gather another category that's available to our buyers. One example here was the road de-icer. We actually started moving from salt to beet juice because it's more sustainable, it has less of an impact on the river. But beet juice actually isn't one of our purchasing categories. So we need to go out and look at maybe 3 or 4 competitors. Again, an opportunity for markets to see what cities need in looking at some of this data. And then there's no because of the difference in price, that there are green products out there, but they're so far afield, we can't justify spending over 20% of our budget for it. Again, great data for our research in the Office of Contract and Procurement, but also information for our vendors to tell them that this is what we're looking for. There's an imperative here to buy green products. If you're coming to us as a vendor, here's a list of the products you should be looking for through your partners. In 2015, our system and our program received an award from the Environmental Protection Agency. And then in 2016, from the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council, we received the overall program award. So as we look forward in this program, what are some of our challenges? I can tell you it's been my job to actually go from agency to agency, selling this program in internally. We've got these great resources available for people to use. The question is are they using them? And if not, why? Some people still didn't even know that, they didn't know what that checkbox in our purchase system meant. And so I got to have that conversation with them. But going door to door is not going to be the effective way for me to get this word out to 30,000 employees. And so we're trying to approach this other ways and educating our buyers in the government by both coming at them from the perspective of how they operate as an agency. So, what they do daily, are they composting at work? Are they recycling at work? But also starting to look at their purchasing practices. So we want to build up some more additional product categories, hence why those check boxes are so important to us. When they report out to us that they're looking for products and we can't find a green product yet, we're going to look at additional product categories. And we need more robust reporting. We spend a lot of money as a city on credit cards, and that doesn't come through this system. So I don't have as clear a sense of what's being spent through credit card purchases. And then we want to link sustainable purchasing to our zero waste goals and through a system of source reduction credits, where if we're actually buying less, if we're buying better, that should be a form of credit when we're looking at our waste diversion efforts in the city. We're starting what we're calling our Sustainable DC 2.0 process. The Sustainable DC plan is about 5 years old. In 2018, we're going to issue a new plan. We kicked this off on Earth Day with a a large event. And then actually tonight, we're going to go live on Facebook and do a panel discussion to get people engaged in joining our work groups. And so please stay connected with our program. And you can learn more about it by following us on social media or reaching out to me. I can take some questions if you'd like.
Actually, if you don't mind, we're going to hold questions to the end. But if you have any questions for Danielle, write them down so you don't forget. When we're done with the 3 speakers, we'll have everyone come back up and do questions for all.
Great.
Thank you, Danielle. Next up is Mr. Andrew Green.
Can you guys hear me okay? Great. So, like I said, I am Andrew Green, and I lead the Environmental Sustainability Office at Capital One. Internally, it's known as Green Solutions. They did not name it after me. It very much did help me getting the job, though. So a little bit about Capital One. You guys have probably gotten some direct mail from us over the years. We are a little bit more than a credit card company, though. We're officially founded in 1994. We spun off of Signet Bank. CEO and founder is Rich Fairbank. Good name. We are headquartered here in McLean, but we are in 5 countries. We've got about 11 million square feet of office space and 4 million square feet of branch and cafe space. We're in the top 10 banks by deposits. So I'm going to talk to you about our composting program. But before that, I want to put it in context of the rest of our sustainability efforts. So this is actually pretty key as we have rolled out our program to help our associates understand why are you doing this in the first place. So last year, we got our senior leadership to sign off on 5 corporate sustainability goals. And the one that the compost program trues up to is establish an office waste reduction target by the end of this year. So I'm waiting to get that approved very end of the year, but it'll be a straight up percentage reduction in our landfill waste. And we can't get there without doing compost and centralized waste. So here's the story. We started working on compost and centralized waste back in 2015. So the first thing we did was steal everybody's trash cans. We actually focused on the West Creek campus down in Richmond, and then the McLean headquarters here. We had not implemented compost at that time. Then we went to our Plano campus down in Texas the first time, did the same thing. Implemented centralized waste, took away everybody's individual trash can. That did not go well. So like within weeks, we gave back half the trash cans, actually. There's a happy ending to that story, though. So we'll talk about why that didn't go well the first time, but one thing to remember is part of Capital One's office space is call center, and the Plano campus was 50% call center environment. Those folks are tied to their phones. They get 2 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch, and so taking somebody's trash can in that situation was a challenge that we didn't address well. So we learned a little bit, and we said, well, we can make this work. And we weren't giving up on the compost. So end of November 2015, we implemented compost here at West Creek and McLean. And we decided we wanted to go back to Plano in a little bit. So we tried doing this again at some other sites first, some other call centers. So we went to our Las Vegas call center site, implemented centralized waste. Then we did a couple Canadian sites. And then the Knowles campus in Richmond. At that point, we figured out we got it. And so we went back to Plano, Texas to redo composting and centralized waste there. And that's where a lot of the story from the slides are going to come. So how do we do it? First thing we do, take away everybody's individual trash can. Then the color becomes really important as far as how do we do the signage and how do we communicate what goes where for composting, recycling, trash, and then shred. Everything that Capital One provides in our cafeterias and our galleys is compostable, all the to-go products. There's one exception, that is Starbucks. The main reason there is, 1, we can't get a compostable Starbucks cup. 2, so many people bring Starbucks in on the way into work that it creates confusion if we had a compostable product for Starbucks here, but you got something at the corner store. The ongoing education is critical. So, no trash cans. You guys might have seen that out when you were throwing away the stuff from your lunch. These are our centralized bins. We have a couple different sizes, but these are in the workspace. Basically a ratio of probably 1 per 30 seats at this point. The galleys all have built-in millwork, compost, recycle, trash. Everywhere, there's always all three options at this point. So this is the communicate with color concept. Blue, recycle. So one of the things we always want people to do is just associate that with recycling. Black, trash. Brown, compost. Brown, dirt, compost. That was kind of the catch there. So the signage always has examples as well as language, and then we have physical examples within the space as well to show people what product actually goes in those bins. These are just some of the samples of our compostable products that we use. Everything, PLA plastic or a fiber-based clamshell container, down to the straws. The top left there are shadow boxes. So these are what we have in our workspace, in our kitchen space for associates in the cafeterias, just to show what can go where. They're right above the individual trash locations. This is a mouse pad, actually, that we gave out to all of our associates. It's a swag with purpose when we roll this out. So you don't know what goes where, it's always sitting right in front of you. That was actually pretty crucial in our call center rollouts. Other signage, just to reinforce that we're really doing this. The same cart, different destinations actually came from the custodial crew. When they empty all the bins, the associates would see them putting the same trash bags in one big bin. All the trash bags are different colors. Green is compost, black is trash, clear is recycling. And so we want our associates to know, really, we are actually sorting this on the back end. We're not just throwing it in the dumpster in the back. And then we came up with a quiz. Cannot be called a CBT because it's not mandatory, but we use this to help just educate folks. And we put some competition and some prizes around this for the big rollouts. This was one we used in Plano recently. We gave away a couple Nest thermostats and a bike, actually, for folks who took this. And I think 20% of the 7,000 person campus took this quiz. All right, so I'm going to shut up for a second and play a little video that we used to roll this out to our associates. And this is from the Plano rollout. Volume up. All right. Volume, guys. Yeah, we might have to restart this one. So while Plano is the second largest site in Capital One location. It is 9 buildings total at this point, 50% call center, 50% staff, knowledge worker. It is the home of the auto loans and home loan business overall. So let's see if they get this one going, or we'll skip it. All right, we'll get it later. So lessons learned. Account for how people work. The reason it failed in Texas so bad was because our folks couldn't get up because they were on the phone. And what happens when you're an hourly associate and you've got a cold? You're still going to come into work, because if you don't work, you don't get paid. You don't have a trash can under your desk, but you have tissues. What happens to those tissues? That's what killed Plano in a week, was tissues on the desk, and how do you handle it? So you have to be creative on making it easy for folks. So it's little things. This is not a hard problem to solve. It was as simple as getting a compostable cup out of the galley, a coffee cup that has a lid, putting it on your desk. And if you have tissues, you put it in, and when you get your break, you go throw it away. It's a closed container. You can hide it under your desk. But it's just thinking through, what does this mean for your associates when you make a big change like this? Because it really is a huge behavioral change. Location is everything. So those centralized bins, how far you have to walk matters. And do you have compost available in each and every one of them matters. So West Creek, we didn't put compost in the workspace the first time. We had compost in the galleys. We had these centralized bins, but instead of compost, they have shred. The problem is our associates are lazy. Very simple. So if I have a bin right there, but it's got trash in it, and I have to walk around that corner to do compost, you're not going to do it. And so we've actually had to go back and start retrofitting our West Creek campus. The other campuses, we did not make that mistake the first time around. Perception was everything, too. So when you think compost, you think rotting food and turning into dirt, and people think smell. And so The reason we didn't put compost in the workplace, in the kind of the workspace at first, was folks were worried it was going to smell. It's the same thing that was going in the trash can, but it was just a mental perception that we had to work our associates through. Then there's outside food and catering. And this is something that you can only solve through communication. So this involves working with our admin teams. When you have a big team event and you bring in Jersey mics for everybody on the floor, most of that stuff is not going to be compostable. So how do you train folks to know when in doubt, throw it out? Let us know so we can supplement the trash and the compost if you're bringing something outside. We had a great story in Texas. So we were down there for the rollout 2 weeks ago. And the largest building on that campus was Building 5, and it holds 1,200 people. And it was also our biggest problem child. It was we'll just say leadership was not as excited about this program as the rest of us were. And on day 2 of the compost rollout, they had a big town hall. And they had barbecue for 1,200 people the second day of our rollout, which was all served in styrofoam containers the whole day. Can't make that up. So for us, it was actually a pretty exciting opportunity, though, because it was a great learning experience to all hands on deck. Everybody crashed that building to say, OK, this came from outside of Capital One. It goes in trash. This is not compost. And so we got in front of 1,200 associates real time on a pretty interesting problem. Volume versus weight. So when we started the program, we kept on thinking about how much weight can we divert from landfill. And we built our bins back of the house, our dumpsters and whatnot, based on that. And actually, Guido over at Freddie Mac has an ingenious solution for this that I just saw yesterday. That's not the problem. It's not weight. Those clamshell containers are really, really bulky. And so you get a ton of volume that you just don't have space for in your dumpsters. And so you blow up your loading dock. So this is something we have not successfully solved for, other than just getting more rolling bins and more dumpsters and things like that. But you should talk to the Freddie Mac folks, because they have a great solution that I just saw yesterday. And then ongoing training. So especially your new associates, when they come in, the kids coming out of school have been composting for years, so they're not actually too hard to get. But your service providers, so our custodial crew, our back-of-the-house kitchen crew, the turnover is pretty high in that space. Call center environment, turnover is pretty high. So ongoing reinforcement of the program. How do you kind of keep training folks? So this turned into a joke from our last rollout. We gave out to the core team when we rolled out the program. And every single one of these things happened. And we just use them as kind of lessons learned of really jump on the squeaky wheels that'll make or break your program. Back to the tissues. Like something as simple as that can ruin the perception of the program and not have compliance and then have leadership not bought into it. Some folks just don't care. It doesn't matter what you do, how excited you are about it. Putting it in context of corporate goals, 10 to 20% of your folks aren't going to care. Executives will make or break you too. So when you do something like take away trash cans, leadership showing that they're doing this as well is a really big thing. We've had mixed success depending on location on that. My straw melted and I'm allergic to corn too. So the plastic that we use is PLA-based, plant-based plastic. You should not drink coffee out of that. It will melt. It is designed to break down at 140 degrees in a compost heap. The plastic is not designed to hold soup or coffee, things like that. So we've learned that the hard way a few times. The allergic to corn, it's just little perception things. So I have a corn allergy. Is this going to hurt me? No, it's not. Actually, the process of manufacturing PLA gets rid of that issue. But associates would worry about that. More bins. And then my favorite is this coffee cup is offensive. So the details matter. There's a certain product out there by Eco Products that has a map of the world on it and a lot of language. And some folks found it a little too left of center for some of the statements on it. So again, it's just little things that can derail your program along the way to keep an eye on. So is the video going to work at this point? All right, let's try again. And no volume.
We're committed to reducing how much we send to the landfill, and we need your help to support new sustainability efforts here in Plano.
Why bother?
Last year alone, our campus produced 820 tons of trash. That's over 259 pounds per person. By simply changing the way we throw away our trash, we can make an immediate difference locally and for the planet. For starters, composting is coming to Plano.
Sounds like a real pain.
Nope, it's easy. Simply reference the signs when pitching your trash.
How does composting even work?
All of our composting waste gets delivered to a partner facility. Over time, all that organic matter breaks down to become nutrient-rich organic soil for gardens, landscaping, and farms. You can put more than just leftover food in the compost bins. We're switching all the to-go containers, cups, and utensils in our cafes and galleys to plant-based compostable materials.
What about stuff like this?
Even that. It's plastic made from corn.
Huh, well that's kind of cool.
In addition to composting, the remaining trash cans under people's desks are being removed. Right now, composting and recycling gets trapped in here and winds up in a landfill. So all around campus, you'll see new consolidated compost recycled trash bins.
How is someone who's tied to their desk supposed to work without a trash can?
Not having a trash can under your desk will be different, but you probably don't have a trash can parked next to you at home either, right? Well, just like at home, you'll walk your trash to a nearby bin and get a few extra steps in.
Nah, I'm not so sure about this.
We get it. This is a big change, but everyone is already doing it successfully in our Las Vegas, Knowles, and Canadian call centers, plus at our West Creek campus and McLean headquarters. And we're adding more sites each year. It's helped divert over 2,200 tons of recyclables, food, and waste from landfills. Help make Plano more environmentally sustainable. Your support is key to making this rollout a success. It's the right thing to do for our associates, our customers, our communities, and our planet.
Great. So that was Nick Naysayer, and we've used him for all of our rollouts at different sites in some form or another, that being the most recent one. One of the things that you saw with Nick, this goes back to the behavior change that we were trying to get out of our associates, especially in the call center, was when he walked by his coworker's desk to take the trash. Again, basic behavior, just getting folks to think differently, think that you're all in this together. That's actually worked really well. So Plano, we rolled out 2 weeks ago, and we're averaging 2,500 pounds a day down there. That's actually our most successful of the big 4 campuses at this point. So what the focus is for us next year is, let's drive the numbers up at the big 4. Big 4 being West Creek, McLean headquarters here, Plano, and then the Knowles campus. If we can get that diversion rate up into the 65% range, we will expand the composting program to the kind of the next level of sites. Centralized waste has been rolled out as 64% of the office portfolio at this point. And we will, as you saw kind of that scrolling list in the video, we're going to continue to expand that everywhere we do a new site or a renovation. That happens automatically. So, all right, guys, thanks.
Please write down your questions for Andrew, and we'll hold them to the end. Chris Garwood.
Well, can everybody hear me okay? Kathy, thank you for inviting me. I was thinking as I was coming up here that I was probably one of the first speakers at one of our first sustainability summits 10, 11 years ago. And the irony of that is that the building we were talking about then was not yet under construction. It was 1812 North Moore Street, which is a LEED Platinum building in Arlington, Virginia. That is now an existing building. And in fact, now as that's being tenanted, and even before it was tenanted, the owners came back to us on numerous occasions and asked us, well, can we make use of this roof surface as an amenity? Can we give people access to these terraces? So all this stuff really comes full circle. It's been an evolving market. The impetus to use roof space has really been driven by the change in the way that we work, the change that the way that we work and live and travel is impacting the size of the spaces that we lease and rent. And so in the commercial office space, corporations are now looking to minimize their footprint. And as a result, they're looking to the landlords to provide them the amenities, the gathering spaces, the breakout spaces that are needed to facilitate their staff. Their staff is also much more transient. So again, they don't want to have the same number of seats within the space that they maybe had 15, 20 years ago. The other thing that's happening is with new office buildings that the existing building stock now has to compete with, those are all being designed with rooftop amenities and other gathering spaces. So that's putting additional pressure on the existing building stock that's out there, whether it's residential, hospitality, or commercial office, to provide those amenities and remain competitive. And so that sort of leads us into our discussion for the day, is to how to approach making, turning these rooftops into amenity spaces and allowing them to contribute not just back to the building, but obviously back to the community and to the planet. So who doesn't want to be at this party tonight? That looks like a lot of fun. I mean, rooftops for years and years and years have been used as gathering spaces. I remember one of the first rooftop decks I went on when I was in my 20s, had friends up in Manhattan, walked into their apartment, which was really a micro unit by our standards. I think New York invented those. And you walk into the apartment and you think, well, how are we going to spend any time here? Well, the answer was you weren't, because only one person could fit into the kitchen at one time. So very quickly, within 10 minutes of being there, a friend takes us up to the rooftop, go up through an enclosed stairway, open up a hatch, and now all of a sudden, it's not much, very simple deck surface, some potted plants, some chairs, tables, and you get up there, you feel the fresh air. It's a unique environment. It's even much different from what's on the street in Manhattan, and you have these views up and down the avenues of Manhattan. Really fantastic, and obviously added a lot of value to those folks that were living in these smaller apartments. So first and foremost, it's about gathering and breakout space. For some building owners, this really becomes an asset where they open these spaces up to the public. Events just like this, whether it's by USGBC or ULI or other organizations around the country, like to make use of these venues, especially when the weather is really terrific, like it is this time of year in the fall. The ability for these spaces to adapt to different uses is actually pretty strong. So you can have sort of informal cocktail gatherings and in another part of the space, or within the same space, have a formal presentation just like we're given today. The challenges, of course, are many. The opportunities are there because, you know, every 15, 20 years, you've got to replace a roof. Or you buy a new property and you have some capital to invest in that property to give it and restore its value. You know, when you see a roof like this is actually up in Rockville, a lot of ponding, drainage issues, they were getting leaks below the roof. You know, it becomes an obvious opportunity to think about doing something maybe a little bit more. You know, when we talk about amenities, it doesn't just have to be a gathering space. There are things that obviously benefit the environment, become an amenity to the community. But you know, these rooftops can be used for a lot more than just placing a green roof and retaining water. Something as simple as what you see, the box in the middle there is a bee apiary. So I've understand from Kathy that the McLean Hilton has one on their roof nearby, and I've also come to understand that they produce over 200 pounds of honey every year for use in their restaurant in the bottom of the building. And so that's a really neat use that's it's not intensive at all. There's really not a lot of infrastructure that has to go in to do an extensive roof like this and to put beehives up there. The image is on the right. Obviously, you can get much more intensive with the soil profiles and the plant species that you place on the roof. You can really use it for agriculture, and in many cases, this is serving restaurants that are either in the local community or actually down in the base of the building. I've also seen examples, and I think of Baltimore all the time when I see these examples because of all the above-grade parking decks that are there. People are reutilizing these parking decks and not necessarily doing a full build-out like this, but are simply putting potted plants up there. Might be pretty big pots, but they're literally growing agriculture that they're using in their restaurants. So the whole farm-to-table, farm-to-fork concept is really viable for just about any underutilized roof surface. And of course, at the end of the day, and I love this picture, it's about well-being. It's about the whole environment. It's about the activity. And there are numerous other benefits which we'll get into for providing a green roof and providing this type of access. But of course, there are lots of challenges that go along with that and a lot of logistics. So, the reason why this came up as, I think, a hot button item with the local community is because it's not always easy to do. And there are strategies that you can use, and there are options for maybe achieving your goals as you go forward. But I can tell you, I know our firm has talked to a lot of companies about, well, potential use of that space, potential use of this space. And a lot of those don't come to pass because there are real challenges involved with doing that. But if you're very smart, you can really take advantage of what is often very underutilized space and create value for the property. This plan actually is for a new building, but this kind of gives you an example of how intense these rooftop amenities can become. It's not just about green roof, which you see in the faded portion of the lower right-hand corner. Pools, fire pits, semi-shaded gathering areas, gathering rooms, conference rooms. Everybody is wanting to sort of get that piece of the sky and take advantage of those spaces. But programming all those things into a new building is one challenge. Trying to get those into an existing building presents a number of others. One of the first things you have to consider when you're looking at a property, and I encourage owners as they're looking to make a transaction and thinking about how to re-leverage the existing building stock out there, to reach out to the design professionals and start to look at the options. Find out what's viable first. Don't go down the road assuming you're going to be able to provide certain value and find out, well, there's a lot of reasons why we're not going to be able to do that. One of the first things that can be a challenge is universal accessibility. As soon as you're providing occupancy on that roof, you better make sure that that building has elevator service and has stair access. Now, there are owners who will pop the elevator up. That's a pretty expensive proposition. It really depends on what your stake is in the ownership of that business and what your long-term goals are. But that in and of itself can be 7 figures. The other part of this is as you're designing the spaces up there, designers like to change the grade plane to make it a little more interesting and to really create unique spaces within that rooftop. You need to make sure that if you're providing stairs, you're also providing a ramp. What's hard to see in this picture is because of the reflections in the glass, but right next to that stairway is a ramp. This actually shows the plan here. And so those things need to be considered. We've also looked at rooftops that have had the roofs replaced. They've added insulation, and so they've effectively raised the roof level. So the first thing you have to do to gain access to that is, again, provide a ramp and accessibility to make that grade change. So that's always a challenge. All those things are easy to plan in a new construction. They're sometimes more challenging to do in a retrofit. Occupancy. This, if you have only one stair going to the roof, you're going to be limited in what you can do. If you have one means of egress, you're really going to be limited to a roof deck that's about 750 square feet or less, assuming about 15 square feet per occupant. Most roof decks that we're seeing are anywhere from 5 to 11, 12,000 square feet. So, if your goal is to reestablish your property against the current market, you're going to be blowing past this right away. So, egress obviously is a concern that goes along with this. If you're going past that 750 square feet, you're going to need 2 remote means of egress. Now that could be as simple as popping a stair up that's already existing. It's not necessarily the end of the world, probably not going to break the budget, but it is something to consider, and also make sure that those stair access points are remote enough. Infrastructure becomes the big thing. When we talk about green roofs and people now occupying these roofs for something more than just service, the loads start to add up. And I've made a list in very round figures. The figures can vary quite a bit of live load for people. Snow load, 30 pounds per square foot, that's always there. If you're doing more of an intensive roof with either plants, crops, other things, your soil profile is going to get deeper and deeper. If you're providing trees and shrubs, again, that profile is going to get deeper. That's adding quite a bit of weight to an existing structure. Now, the good thing is, a lot of buildings have a safety factor built in. Structural engineers will often add sometimes up to 50%. I know one structural engineer who adds even more to the safety factor of their structures. And so oftentimes with some very specific reinforcement in certain areas, you can meet the loading requirements for the space that you have. Some other strategies, though, are to be very specific about where you're increasing the soil depth, where you're putting point loads to put it near a column, or put it near the exterior where the structure is a little bit stronger. And so that can start to inform the programming of the space. You can't program without taking into consideration the structure. And I think Chris Gorthy's example before of how they worked with the structural engineer and the fabricators to really nail down what the cost and scope of their structure was, and they took it from $900,000 to, what was it, 200? Don't take no for an answer the first time or get too shocked by the values. These are the kind of things that you really need to take some time to study and to push some buttons. So some other things that you can do besides putting the heavier loads in very specific places: use lightweight decking. If you can only support a certain load, there are green roof systems out there that are much lighter weight. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in another second. But there's a lot of other infrastructure that you have to bring up there. Just because it's an outdoor space doesn't mean you don't need to light it. These spaces are being programmed with fire pits and ping pong tables and all kinds of other activations. Well, with that, you have the need to wash the surface down, to irrigate, to provide propane or natural gas service for the seating areas up there. One other thing you need to be careful of, and you can see along the edge, the guardrail. Okay, in certain jurisdictions, if this is your roof, and Alexandria is a good example, they may look at that guardrail as an extension of your parapet, especially if you have a sort of flying glass wall that's going above that. So you need to be very careful about where your roof height is being measured to. So again, AV, seating areas, guardrails, basically everything is up there. Now this is a project called Latitude in Arlington, and right after the rooftop opened, there was a severe windstorm. And so the lesson learned from that, and this was more of an operational lesson than a design lesson, is that the ping pong table that was up on that roof just about flew off the roof. And I tried to find it. I think everybody deleted their email that had this dramatic picture in it. That ping pong table was literally hanging off the edge of the roof and could have done a lot of damage from 14 stories up to cars or people below. You know, it seems sort of trivial. You're putting a lot of furniture and other things up there and maybe not thinking about what happens when the weather comes and hits. So providing tie downs or anchors for a lot of the equipment up there makes a lot of sense, and some of that stuff can be pre-designed into the solution. Obviously, if you're adding gathering space, community room, conference space, there's all the usual infrastructure that you have with a brand new base building. You're gonna have to bring, you know, sprinkler service up to that point to meet the life safety requirements, sign your egress, gas, water, restrooms, and everything needs to come into that space. So it can become fairly intensive, but those that are willing to go this far and add space, either it's an existing room that, you know, they want to blow out and build out a little bit further, or reutilizing completely an existing space, there's a lot of infrastructure that has to come up and address that. Not to mention the fact that if you're building a new space, well, you're going to have to probably up the insulation and rating on the roof and other things, because if it's a space that was not previously conditioned and you come in and condition the space, you will have to replace the roof and thermally insulate to meet all the existing energy codes. So back to this example here, this was actually a natatorium up in Rockville. The space was not conditioned, and so in replacing this roof, they did have to take the insulation, move it topside. It was not before. You can imagine with a pool below what the steel joists looked like. They were pretty rusted, a lot of condensation. But in the process of adding, you know, mechanical ventilation and cooling to the space, you've got to make sure that the rest of the components of the building are intact and are going to work and not create problems in the future. So weather barrier, all the usual solutions, but in regard to looking at what you're doing with your roof system relative to placing a green roof or pavers or other things over top of it, there's a couple things to consider. One of the biggest green roof failures was the Oakland Museum in California. Now that green roof was done at a time in the 1960s where the materials and soils and all those things really hadn't been studied to the degree that we have at this point. They'd used an asphalt-based roofing product. Well, it turned out that that asphalt-based roofing product didn't actually restrict the growth of roots into it. And so what happened is that the plant material actually physically degraded the roof. We've learned from that since then, and you know, probably the best roof membrane that you can put down to resist roof penetration is actually a TPO. That being said, if we look at the layers of a green roof these days, there are many more things going in place, including filter fabric that should protect that new roof enclosure that you've put on. One of the other failures, famous failure, was Kaiser Center, and what happened there is that the filter fabric actually degraded, and so water, soil, aggregate filtered down through the system and ended up clogging the drainage that was serving the roof. Now, the advantages of a green roof, I think we've probably talked about in previous green weeks, but the ability to retain the water is paramount, especially in certain jurisdictions like the district and in Tysons here. Now that's more of a factor if you're doing new construction, but I'd have to check. It may also be a factor if you're doing a major alteration. But one thing to be aware of is even though this green roof and the soil profile is providing additional insulation and R value, when that soil is wet, the R value actually drops. Now we can talk about some of the regulatory concerns. We started to talk about the roof a little bit. You know, the best thing you can do is, you know, the codes keep evolving, but so too do the interpretations of the codes. So especially when you're working on an existing building, it's critical to go and have, you know, pretty long discussion with the local, you know, code authorities, the permit department, but also the inspectors. The last thing you want to do is get all the way down the road, made this investment on an existing asset, and get stuck. Because all of a sudden they say, well, now for instance, and this is in the new code, you're providing an assembly space on the existing roof. So the 2015 code actually now clarifies and stipulates that all floors below that assembly space have to be sprinkled. So it's not just about a continuous path of egress. The codes are now starting to address these adaptive reuses of rooftops and terraces and be very specific about what the requirements are. That being said, that all seems pretty straightforward, but those, you know, I see a lot of designers, design partners in the room. We know that we get a different reading from every jurisdiction that we go to, and sometimes if you talk to 3 people in the same department, you get 3 different answers. So very, very important part of the process. Again, the jurisdiction that you're in makes a difference. If you are having to redo your roof because you're changing the use or occupancy below that roof, or doing an extensive alteration, your requirements to meet the energy codes are different in different jurisdictions, whether it's Maryland, DC, Virginia, but you can expand that really across the country. So, solutions. There's a lot of solutions out there. I think this image actually is a pretty good example, and you know, we didn't talk about raised planters. So if you need added soil depth because you want to create a certain feeling up in that new amenity space, raised planters are actually a pretty good solution. It also helps you move that soil profile from the immediate roof membrane that's down below it. You know, fireplaces, guardrails, everything seamlessly integrated with the furnishing really becomes an attractive amenity. There's an obvious need from business for these breakout spaces. A lot of office buildings, not just retail and hotels, but office buildings are providing Wi-Fi service so that their staff or the staff of the tenants can actually go and work outside, make a phone call, whatever that might be. Obviously, it's a great gathering space. We've talked about microfarming to some degree. I really love this photo. Sometimes people will take things into their own hands. But, you know, everybody loves a view. But, I mean, how much fun are these guys having? Probably not condoned by the landlord or the local building officials, but the rooftops can also be reutilized for recreation. This is an example actually in Miami, where I think the city has worked with different, this is, I believe, over a parking garage, but they've worked with different garage owners around the city to provide the needed recreation space for their constituents. So, you know, the benefits are many. But one of the biggest ones besides sustainability is it's really all about tenant attraction and retention. And it's becoming an ever more competitive marketplace. Especially as our cities become denser, especially as our office building stock is going through a bit of a glut right now, and there's a lot of open occupancy. The amenities are really becoming a priority, which again underscores why the local Tysons business owners listed this as a need. Views are obvious. Everybody likes being higher up in a building. You're providing value for the folks who might own a unit, might be staying in a hotel in the lower part of the building, might have office space in the bottom of the building. Giving them access to this rooftop amenity goes without saying that they're going to see that as a plus and make you more competitive. Well-being aspects of this, both in terms of overall sustainability, the ability to get outside, gain fresh air, collaborate, socialize, again, go without saying. And thank you.
Thank you. I invite our speakers back to the stage. Do you have any questions for any one of them? Danielle, Chris, or Andrew or Chris? Raise your hand and I'll come around.
Hi, thank you for very nice presentations. I'm Smita Thomas, an energy consultant. I have a question for Danielle. You showed on the screen your green procurement, the web page, and people were leaving comments, or the staff was leaving comments on why they didn't find something. Is that information public? You were saying, your vendors can see what's not available. I was just wondering if you make that public.
I don't know if the comments are public. That's a good question. But whether or not it was a green procurement in that instance is public. Our Office of Contracting and Procurement participates in a transparency initiative, so they do make their reports public. But I'll have to get back to you. I can get your information and share whether or not those comments are public, the details.
Okay.
Thank you. This is a question for Andrew. I've worked with composting and other facilities in the DC area, and we had issues with the hauler rejecting loads for contamination, and also just finding haulers that would honestly take the load to the place that they say they're taking it. Mm-hmm. How have you dealt with that in other places, and how successful have you been?
So we actually haven't had too much of a problem with contamination here at the McLean headquarters. In Richmond, we have overall. And that's been a matter of partnering with the hauler themselves. So there we use a hauler name called Nope, actually, Natural Organic Product. I forget the last E there. But they actually will kind of help sort through some of the contamination for us in the first place and work with us to send pictures to address it with our associates. In McLean, we have not seen as much of an issue. Part of that is just actually the way the building is kind of set up and where the composting options were in this building. Plano, again, we're only a couple weeks in there. Similar situation. We have an agreement with the hauler to kind of sort through and help us understand where the problems are. But we haven't had any loads rejected yet there as well. We did see that with recycling, though, especially when we first rolled out the program here in West Creek. When we started the compost program, a lot of our folks were still having trouble understanding what the difference was between recycling and composting. And so the recycling waste stream got terribly contaminated. And so to the point where for the first several months, we actually had people sorting behind the scenes on the loading dock through that particular waste stream. As far as folks going where they say they are, I've heard that from some other folks around here too. We haven't seen an issue with it, though I haven't audited recently this year with our hauler up here. We feel very confident with our folks down in Richmond for those two campuses, and then in Plano, the hauler is actually the composting facility themselves as well, so we feel pretty good about that.
Thank you. Next.
Question for Andrew about the waste hauler.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to put in a third dumpster?
We did.
The question is, did you have to put in a third dumpster for the waste hauler?
It's different by site. So here in Richmond and McLean, we actually have 96-gallon rolling bins that the hauler, kind of like your big recycling bins you would have at home. That's where we store all the compost, and it's picked up daily. So we didn't have to add a new dumpster there. In Plano, we did. We actually added 3-yard dumpsters in addition to our recycling dumpster and our landfill dumpster.
Any others? And this will be the last question.
So first question is for Danielle. You were talking about when somebody's ordering green supplies and they put down green is not available. Is there a time frame between the time they say it's not available and your team responds to doing the research and saying yes it is or it's not, so that they can move forward with the purchase?
Yeah, that was one of our challenges. We realized we weren't finding that out until we pulled a quarterly report. And so the idea was to have someone who was looking at those reports on a more regular basis, because the report was giving us the information, but the procurement was over by the time we got it. So we did have someone who was looking at the reports more frequently. Unfortunately, just to be honest, right now that position's empty, and so someone isn't looking at them as often as we'd like. But hopefully I will be able to step more into that role.
Thank you. Chris, I have a question for you. In your existing projects, when you create a green roof or a roof that is full of amenities, what is the percentage cost that's added to the project, and then how often have you had to have the structure beefed up to put in whatever is required by the owner?
Well, the variations can be pretty extreme. If you're dealing in an older structure, older structures actually tended to be built a little stronger, and so may inherently be able to take the weight. Newer structures are built, to have a 30, 40-year life cycle versus 50, 60, 70 to 100. So it's a hard question to answer because it's really unique to each building. Each building, even though there are a lot of similar components, really is a prototype. And it's not just a matter of looking at maybe at the design drawings, but you really need to go out and field inspect the conditions to make sure that what you're assuming on paper can actually be put into action. And again, I'll point to Chris's example of having to work through or work out the assumptions of his structural engineer with their roof, just putting structural panels up there, not even half of the infrastructure that we're talking about placing on these roofs. So the answer really is that it's unique to every building. And so what may be a $1.5 million program for one building might be $3 million for another trying to execute the same program. Really depends on what the bones of the building is.
We actually do have a couple more minutes if there's another question. Are there any? Okay. All right, then we're going to jump. Thank you, all three of you. Andrew, Chris, and Danielle. Very insightful. We are going to jump right into our closing keynote speaker, our last session of the day. So I welcome Mr. Eric Corey-Freed to the stage. We will So Eric is the principal of Organic Architect. He is an expert and visionary in biophilic and regenerative design. He's author of 11 books. He's a LEED fellow. He is, despite what it says up there, he has traveled the world speaking about sustainability and sharing his vision with like-minded folks and some not so like-minded. So we're thrilled to have him here today to tell us why we're doing it all wrong and how to change our way of thinking. So stay tuned.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this working? First of all, thank you to Kathy for this thankless, awful job that I don't know if she lost a bet or whatever, but that she had to do for putting this all on and forcing me to do this. So thank you for that. What I'm going to talk about today is a little unusual. By the way, if you're under the age of 30 and you do the tweeter thing, you can do that here. But what I'm going to talk to you about is something that I've been obsessed with for 30 years, but I'm now finally getting to put it into practice. And so it's a little strange. And then the road to get me here is that I'm an architect. I'm not a contractor. I have smooth hands. And I designed buildings for that whole period. But all of them were green. And it's basically the culmination of everything you saw today, right? Pushing for LEED Platinum, pushing for net zero, living building challenge stuff. But I started to get impatient, and I imagine some of you are kind of feeling the same way. So if all of today was showing you what's currently available to you now as tools, I'm going to show you what's possible. Because the way we build our buildings is stupid, right? We pump in energy, and if the building is too hot, we pump in more energy. If it's too cold, we pump in more energy. And we're just on this weird cycle, and it just keeps continuing that way, and it's bizarre to me. And it's been like that forever. We've been building the same way for as long as I can remember. And so I decided that it was up to me to become a spokesperson for sustainability pretty early in my career. And I think all of you should be spokespeople as well, and I'm knighting you to be spokespeople. Because we need to make a change, and we need to do it rather quickly. But I'm a very unlikely spokesperson. I accept that. First of all, I'm weird. I'm a very weird guy. I shouldn't be in front of you at all. And I know what you're thinking. Like, you're looking at me like he used to be like in a boy band or something. But I've aged horribly. So it's not like I'm a Timberlake, but more like a Fatone. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going very well. And I get that. And I realize that I have whatever disease Alec Baldwin has is the one that I think I have now, where I'm just keep bloating until we explode. I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm in this weird position where I go around the country and I go on TV and radio and I talk about stuff, and it's very strange. It's also weird to do it now, given what's going on. Whatever your political persuasion, it's a weird time to be alive, right? Like, I'm not alone in this. A few weeks ago, I spoke in Indianapolis, and they said, whatever you do, don't mention Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or climate change. And I said, that's my whole act. Have you seen that's everything I have. And so and the reason we need to change is because it's not working. Like, this whole slow incremental, make everybody feel good about it, it's not you know, I was speaking in Kansas, and a guy came up to me, and he was very proud about it, and he said, you know, I had lead paint in my house, and I turned out fine. I'm like, no, you didn't. You're screwed up. Like, I don't know what's going on with you, but you're weird. Like, you know. And if I wasn't here, I'd be home rocking in the fetal position, basically just waiting for all this to end. So I get it. It's a strange time, and eventually we're all doomed anyway. So it doesn't matter. It's basically my point. But I realize that our job in sustainability is somehow to, by the way, this is the whole act. It's not, there's no content or anything.